Continuing ISM Lunch and Learn series. Today we're going to be discussing Custom Office with our consultant, Bruce Kern. He's going to be showing us, I believe, some tips and tricks and a few pointers and some information on this product and how it can benefit your vast system. With that, I'm going to turn everything over to Bruce. Bruce, welcome, and thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thanks for the nice introduction, Sherry. Again, my name is Bruce. We're going to be going over the Custom Office, as Sherry explained. This is called a lunch and learn. It's part demonstration, part technical information, and there's so much that you can do with Custom Office. We have an awful lot to cram into here. So with that in mind, a lot of what we're going to show you today is not step by step how to do everything, because we'd be here for a week. So some of this is pre-built and some of it's not pre-built. Part of this is to give you some technical information, but part of it is also just to give you the big picture in terms of what some possibilities for things are that might plant some seeds for you. So with that in mind, you should be able to see my Sage 100 ERP desktop. It's the new Sage 100 2014 version, so if you haven't seen what that kind of looks like as you get in here, now here you can see what it looks like. So let's talk a little bit about what Custom Office is. Custom Office is a customization tool that allows you to kind of bend your Sage 100 system around your company without touching your source code. There are some limitations in terms of what it can do, but it can do an awful lot. And it does require the Custom Office module, and that is the last little folder that I have in my menu listing here on the left. And we'll be going in and out of that all in the next hour here. Okay. Another thing to just kind of be aware of is because the Custom Office module can dramatically affect how the system looks and operates, it's probably a good idea if you have this module to go ahead and put security on it. So just real quick, like under role maintenance, you could pull up a security role and you'll note that there is some Custom Office settings on several of the tabs. So you can expand those and either grant access to these tasks or not. So just be advised there is some role maintenance there. Now another thing that anybody who talks about Custom Office really should begin the whole conversation with is about the sort of the layering, if you will, of customizations and what trumps other things. So just to expose you to that idea, the first thing I'm going to do is pull up a user here. This is Sue Sales. She's in a customization group called SLS. And if I were to open up an item maintenance screen here, and I'm just going to launch something here, and we'll be doing this a lot today, I want to just note that if we were to customize a new panel, if we were creating a customization, the very first thing we ought to decide is for who this needs done and where it needs done. So specifically, you could do customizations literally for all users in all companies in your Sage system. You could make the customizations for all users in a particular company, and you'll note that there's a couple in the lower part of the screen that have been set up that way. But you can also set these up for specific groups. But keep in mind, the reason I'm spending time talking about this is you can customize yourself right into a corner. And just because you can do a customization doesn't necessarily mean you should do a customization. So give this some thought ahead of time. There are cases where if you make a user-specific customization in a particular screen, it's going to look different for them potentially than it does for any other user you have. And so troubleshooting problems with things like that can be very time-consuming. So my advice is to keep it more general and make a real good business case for why the customization is needed in the first place. That's my speech on all of that. Okay. So some of the things that we can do with Custom Office, lots of different things. We can move things around. We can hide things. We can add buttons. We can add tabs. We can add fields. We can add tables. We can do all sorts of stuff. So with that in mind, we're just going to get started and start making some customizations here. First thing we're going to want to do is just show you some basics on how to move and or rename a field. So to do that, first thing I want to do is open up the Custom Office, and if you want to actually operate on a particular screen, you can navigate this customizer selection right here. And if you were to go into something like inventory, you would see a sub-menu open up. And then if you were to look at item maintenance, you'd see all the different panels and objects that you could potentially affect under custom office for that particular item, in this case, item maintenance. That can be a little hard to navigate. As you can see, there's quite a bit of stuff there. Another option, and my preferred method for going in and accessing a panel I want to do some work on, is simply to launch the task that I want. In this case, I've got a shortcut for item maintenance up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a shortcut. It's Control, the Control key, plus the F9 key. So it's a little shortcut. It launches the same thing, only it launches just the screen you're in. So now I'm in the panel selection specifically for item maintenance. Now what I want to do is I'm going to operate on this one here. We're in the A03 company, and I'm going to operate, I'm going to modify some more things for this particular setting that we've already got in here. So the first thing I'll notice is that it opens up the panel that I was on. In other words, it's the main panel. That's what this P main is indicating, that it's the main panel. Okay, so right now I could work on any object that's in here. And I'm going to do just a couple basic things. I'm going to rename a field. Here's this field called retail price, which doesn't do a whole lot in standard Sage 100. And I'm just going to change the name on that by double-clicking on the field, or I can right-click, and it'll open up the field here. And I'm just going to change it to SLP to stand for Suggested List Price. Notice I can add some other attributes to it. Just for today's demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and change the color to red. And as you see over here in the Options tab, I could also do some things regarding sizing, and I could hide a field with this as well. We'll do that in a minute. So right there, I've changed it to SLP. Another thing we can do is we can move fields. Now, as you can see here, we're looking at the sort of design of this panel behind the scenes, and you want to be careful when you're moving standard objects around that you can have problems if you stack things over the top of other things, particularly if they're both active. Not every object on a panel will always be active. It will depend on your setup options and so on. But let's say we wanted to move this inventory cycle field for whatever reason. We wanted to move it over here under the unit of measure. So I can just grab the field right here with my mouse, and I can just move it over here with my mouse just like that. If I want to move it a little bit more difficult way, I can go ahead and open this up, and I can play with these position and size settings, which will also accomplish the same thing. Usually it's easy enough to just try to drag things over and then kind of fine-tune as you need to going over there. So there's a field that's been moved. And then what I'm going to do is save that real quick. So there's if you ever want to see like a preview of what some of the things you've been doing are, you can hit this little preview button, and it'll tell me, yes, your inventory cycle's been moved, and you've got this renamed to SLP. I'm going to go ahead and hit the save icon here, and it's telling me my customizations are now saved. If I close out of this to back out, notice I'm back out at what looks like the first spot when you come into an item screen, and showing all the tabs across, So if I wanted to just be done right now, I could just hit X one more time, and I'd be done with my customization. But I want to do another customization, and this one's on the Additional tab. So once I have this D main panel up for item maintenance, you can just go into this big area here in the middle, and you can just right-click, and you can locate any of these other tabs, and such as the Additional, and I'm going to say Go to Panel, and then it brings that panel up. So now we're able to work on this one. Now this one has a field we're going to say that we don't really use, and to avoid confusion and questions, we're just going to hide this field that we don't need anybody to see to avoid problems. And that's going to be our routing number. This happens to get used in the bill material module when work order is implemented, and we're not going to have that here. So I'm going to highlight the field here to get up my routing number properties, and I'm going to come over here to my options, and I'm going to tell it that it's hidden. I may also want to turn this off from being a tab stop, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and hide it and say OK, and then I'm going to go ahead and hide this label here as well. So I'm going to come over to its options and tell it that it is also hidden. Now keep in mind, all these changes that I've been making, and I'm going to go ahead and save that, were for all users in the company A03. So when I went into that setting, it's still active until I get all the way out. Now I'm going to go back and take a quick look at this and see if our customizations took. You should always do that when you're building customizations. It's very much a trial and error kind of a thing. So sure enough, we have the retail price has been renamed to SLP. We've moved the inventory cycle fields over to the right, and we no longer see the routing number that was in this area just above the buyer code. Okay. Now let's take it up a notch. So that's kind of working on doing some simple things with the existing fields. We're going to see if we can add something that the system doesn't have at all. So we're going to come up with a new tab for inventory maintenance, and then we're going to put some different types of UDF fields in it. So this is a pretty cool thing to do. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and launch my customizer screen. Oop, it's already open. Must have popped up down below. Here, let's close some stuff down. Okay, so here we are. It just opened up and dropped it on the bottom. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to add a panel. So there's the custom tabs. I'm just going to say add. It just added tab number 8 here, and it's going to give me an opportunity to give it a name. So for today's purpose, I'm just going to call it the UDF tab. And UDF is a term used frequently in Custom Office. It stands for User Defined Field. And if I want to, I can give it a color. I'm an Oregon Duck, so I'm going to go with green. And there you can see it's kind of added a tab. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and just save that right there. And we're going to talk about setting up fields. So without doing anything further, what I've done so far, if I pull up an item, is I've added a new tab, but notice there's no fields on it. So now we want to add some fields. So let's go take a look at the fields that we're going to add. So fields are maintained and created under user-defined field and table maintenance in the Custom Office module. And what we're going to do is go find our table and look at the fields that we have set up in here. So this one happens to be in common information, and here's the CI item master. For those of you who don't know the data file structures, it's a very good set of background material to know when you're using Custom Office, because you're using all these tables. So that's good background information. If you didn't know it, the inventory master actually lives in this common information table. That's why we're going there. So we're going to hit this button here, and it's going to give us a list of the user-defined fields. These are the custom fields that we've got set up, and we've got a little variety here just to expose you to some of the variety that's available. Let's take a look. Here is the color UDF. This is a list box, and we told it how long it's going to be, and here's its caption. So when we put it on a field, that's what it's going to display for us. If we look at the validation tab here, this is a very powerful component, and we'll be dealing with throughout the demo today. In this case, the colors can be either blank, red, white, or blue. Take a look at this data source. This one does not have a data source, and we'll talk more about data sources as we get into some more complicated examples. All right, let's take a quick look at the hazard rating. This one is a drop box. So we defined it as a drop box. We gave this one a length of 14. And primarily we did that, again, to provide a validation list. So this is a drop box with a list of choices when we add it to the screen in theory. Okay? And again, there's no data source. It is strictly, we put it in right at the item. Okay? So we'll take a look at this next one. This is the organic certified. This is just a checkbox. So we told it it's a checkbox. It defines that as length 1. We'll see that we'll have the ability of checking a checkbox. Checkboxes will definitely usually be like a yes-no type of a field. And then we created the UPC code. This is just what's called a multi-line. In other words, it's just a field to type information into. It happens to hold 15 characters. This one has no data validation. Okay, so that's the setup of the fields. So before you put fields on a screen, you have to define the field. So step 1, if you're going to do UDFs, is you have to come up with a field. And then you get to decide to put those on a screen. So let's try that next. Go ahead and close that. Come back over here to our item maintenance, and we're going to see if we can put these on a screen and have them work for us. So I'm going to click on the number 8 tab. I'm going to launch my customizer, And I'm going to, again, modify this for the company A03. And here is my blank tab, tab number 8. Now, these buttons on the left do all sorts of different things. The one you're going to use the most if you're using Custom Office is probably this one. This is the little grid with a little cylinder on it. It's the Add Field or Add User-Defined Field box. If I click that, that becomes active, and then I get to start drawing little shapes on the screen here. So I just put this wherever I want it, and I just draw a box for the field that I'm trying to add. In this case, I'm going to do the color first. So we're going to pick color. That opens up a Find Selection field, and it knows that we're looking for the fields in the item code because the fields were defined for the item code, and we were in the item code launching the customizer. So this works pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I'm going to now check my settings on this one. So this one, the color was that a list box? The color was a list box. Yes, it was. Okay, so that was the one where we made it 10. So I'm just going to right-click on that. We're going to check our options here, and it's quite a bit wider than it needs to be. And typically, I'll make it a couple characters wider than I really need it. And then I'll probably just leave this about like that, and we'll just say OK for that one. All right, now we're going to add the hazard rating. I'm going to click the button here again. We're just going to draw the shape. This one's our drop-down box. And there's our hazard rating. We're going to select that one. And let's see here. On the hazard rating, that one, I usually like to make that one a little bit taller. And you'll see why when I add it to the screen here. Let's just go ahead and make that one. That's probably fine, and I think that 16 will probably be good enough. Okay, there's our hazard rating. And then we'll put the checkbox for the organic certified here. Organic certified. Now, notice that one, it put the label for the organic certified off to the right. So if I didn't like that, I could fix that. I'll shrink this down. I could fix that by just taking that out and putting in a text label over here. I'm just going to leave that for now. That's typically what happens on the checkbox. And then last but not least, let's do a UPC code. And we'll put that guy right down here. And there's our UPC code. And this one only needs to be a height of 1. And that's 15 characters long, so I'll probably put 17. And we'll just kind of leave it like that. Another thing you can do in here, you'll notice as with the Sage standard screens, you can put borders around things. So if I wanted to draw a border around this stuff for whatever reason, I could do that. Maybe give it a label. If I want to make it a certain color, we can do all this kind of stuff. Maybe I'll go with the recessed for now, just for grins. Say OK. And for now, we're just going to go ahead and save this and see how we did. Just make that one a little taller. The drop-downs tend to like a little more height. All right, so it's saved. Now we're going to see how we did. We're getting back out, and we'll open up that screen, and we'll pull up an item. We'll come over here to our UDF tab, and here's our fields here. So if I wanted to pick the color red for this one and give this one a, say it was safe and it's organic certified, and maybe give it a value here, I could click accept on that. And then if I pull that back up, there it is. Another interesting thing that you can do with Custom Office, as I'll just hit the accept button here, is when you add customizations to screens, if I pull up the standard view here, you can customize that. So if we take a look at this UDF view, we were able to go through and add all our customized lookups here. So what that does for you, if I wanted to look something up, this is a view specifically for UDFs, I could now see and sort on all these fields here. So I could see right here, you know, what these items have for these values in my UDF. So I can now locate information based on my custom fields. That's another nice little piece you can do right there. Sometimes alone solves some problems. Okay, so that's some basic stuff about adding fields, new fields, without much of a flow. So to take it up a notch, what we really have to do is expose you to the idea of how do you flow data through the system. Okay, so we added some fields there, but the idea here is, and so we're going to do a little scenario. We want to do a customization, let's say, that tracks the source of an order that we took from a customer. So what we're going to do is see if we can put in some customizations, and we want to be able to print that on our order documents. We may want to print it on our invoice. We may want to see it on a reprint. We may want to see it in the customer screen as well after the fact so that we can get that information and find it usable. All right, so the first thing we need to do is we're going to talk about the UDF definition. So I've got a little shortcut here. And we're going to go to the sales order module. And we're going to say that this UDF, we're going to start it at the sales order level, and it's the header field we're going to make it. Okay, so here's the SO sales order header. We're going to go ahead and take a look in here. And here's my UDF order source. Let's take a look at this guy. Now, here it is. It's a simple drop box, and it's 10 characters. What do we have for choices here? We have, email, fax, phone, walk-in, website, trade show. Those are the values that we're going to have. Now notice that we're starting at the sales order level. There is no source here. Sales order is the source. So this is just like any of the other UDFs that we've already taken a look at. All right? But let's say we want to print that information on a sales order or a pick sheet. Then what we have to do is we have to know, well, what table uses, what table does the sales order printing use to get the information? You might think it's the sales order header. And depending on the version you are in, you might be right, but in this version it's not. And the newer versions of Sage, they use what's called work tables. So let's take a look at the SO sales order work. Here's the SO sales order work table right down here. So we'll go into here. And this is the first place we'll get exposed to the concept of how do you flow data. Now notice there's my UDF order source. If you're designing your UDFs elegantly, I would suggest that you should use the same name for your UDF when it's going to be linked to any other UDF to pass the data. Otherwise, it can get kind of confusing just to try to follow it. But regardless of what you name it, if we go in and take a look at this one that's for the work table, it has the same information basically, but what's different about it is it actually comes from the sales order header. So over here on the Data Sources tab is where you can define a UDF to get information from somewhere else other than the place where it's already at. So this one looks at the data source of the sales order header, and it looks at the field for order source, and it's bringing it into this field, which also elegantly is named order source. Now let's say we wanted to flow it over to the invoice for this particular order. All right, and let's say the invoice form as well. So we need to find out the invoice uses the SO invoice table. So let's go over to that one. And that's up here. SO invoice header. Here we are. Let's take a look at this one. There's our order source right there. And we're going to come over here. We're going to take, again, focusing on the flow. The rest of it's the same. Here we have the source for the invoice header is also the sales order. So the sales order is the starting point. It hands it off to the sales order work table to be able to print it on the sales order. It's also handing it off to the SO invoice so that value then flows over to the invoice data entry as well. And similarly, you'll get the concept here. We'll take a look at the SO invoice work. This is the one that actually allows you to print print your invoices. So if we take a look at this one, we added that to the work table. We'll go in here, look at our data source as well, and notice that this is getting it out of the invoice header right here. Now, this one's actually got two sources. Now, this has two sources because we're also passing it over to history. But as far as printing it on the invoice initially, that's what this one is for. This one I added later to be able to do some history printing, but you get the idea. Okay, so sometimes you end up having to figure out, well, where do I want this data to end up? And you sometimes have to have several stops in between to be able to get it to flow all the way through. Okay. Now we're just going to take a look at a couple more tables. I don't want to bore you to death with table hopping, but we're going to take a look at one more. We're going to take a look at the AR invoice history header. That one down here. Oh, there it is. It's in my recent list. It's faster to find it if it's there. It's a shorter list. We'll just take a look at this one. This one's dealing with passing information over to the history. And what it's doing here is it's saying it's getting it out of this transaction posting. So there's another UDF passing it to there. The point being, there can be quite a few stops to get something all the way through from the starting point to where you may want it, depending on how far and how many places you want it to show up. It all depends on the circumstances. All right, now let's see here. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to actually kind of run one of these through and kind of see what we get. So let's get out of here. And let's start a sales order. Okay, so we're just going to get a new order, and we're going to pick it for, let's use ABF. They're the first one in the list. And I can fill out any of this other information, of course. Here's my order source drop-down box right here on my header tabs. If I drop this down, let's say this one is was a phone-in order. And I can come over here. We'll put something on this. I'm just going to add something out of my miscellaneous list. I bought some custom furniture finish for $12. And we're pretty much done with this order here. We're going to go ahead and see if we can get this to show up. And let me write down the order number here. It's number 184 for ABF. All right, let's see what we have here. We're going to go to print the order. And this is my customized form. I want to launch my designer here, which is going to open up Crystal, because I want to show you that work table in Crystal so you can see what I was talking about. Okay, so this is the design of that Crystal form behind the scenes. And over here is my Field Explorer on the right. If I open that up, this table, this SO sales order work, this is that table that we added that UDF to. So it's just to kind of draw the concept. And if we were to expand that table here and we're working in Crystal, you'll see all the other fields that are available in that sales order entry screens. So as I scroll down to the bottom here, these are all stock fields. The UDFs, when you do this, will be at the bottom down here. So here's my two UDFs. And a little side trick, if you've added a UDF to a table like the sales order work and you come in here to add them to your form, let's say, and you don't see those fields down there, one of the things you can do that typically is not uncommon, but not all the time, you can come over here to Database, Verify Database. This will take Crystal out, and it will go and refresh all the fields, if you will. So if they aren't showing up there when you go to do this, and they've been added, then they'll show up after you do that. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And then here I've just added that right to my form here, okay? So just showing you that. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to preview this guy and take a look. And sure enough, there is my order source. Okay, now let's flow this over to the invoice data entry. So here's my invoice entry. I'm going to get a new invoice number. And I said it was order 184. So we'll come down here and find our order from today. And sure enough, there came over my UDF. It's got my value pre-populated in it, ready to go. Come over here to the lines and answer yes to the question. I guess we didn't order any. That's not good. That's all right. We can still continue on. I've got some sample data here. We'll just do a quick print on this guy if it even lets us. Let's take a quick look and see if it's on the form. And there it is. Okay, so I should have probably put a quantity order. Not a very good example. All right, so that's flowing it through there. Then what I think I'll do, I'm going to come back to that invoice, and I do want to add a line with some quantity because I actually want to flow this over to history. So let me try that again. Pick one of these guys, and we'll give it a quantity this time. Okay. Now I want to go ahead and update this so you can see the next part here. And we're just going to go ahead and preview this. Now notice that this sales journal also has my order source on it. So in the newer versions of Sage, all the journals are also crystal. So this gives you ability to also customize those within the user-defined fields that you might have, as well as any other customization you might like to do. So that's the purpose of showing you that. And then we're going to go ahead and run this update. And we don't really need to run it through to the GL. Okay. Now, something to just keep in mind, I just showed you the daily sales order sales journal with a UDF on it. Unlike some customizations where we're dealing with it on a company-specific basis, where I define these for the AO3 company and all users, and where I had a specific form in that company that was customized, if you add a UDF to a journal table, it will affect all companies in your system. The journals are not split out by company like much of the rest of the system is. So just be aware of that. Okay. Now let's take a look at after the fact. Let's take a look at invoice history inquiry. So if I look in here and I go and pull up one of these invoices, I think this is the one from today that we just did, I can see that I can also add my UDF right down here on the bottom. I can also flow that through to my history inquiry screens, which is kind of nice. Another thing I could do, and this is where you saw when I had the second data source and it was passing it over to history, I can also, if I were to reprint that invoice after the fact, maybe the customer's dog ate it and they need another copy, I can also include that on my reprints if I add it to the right tables. So obviously the customer region didn't get all the way through, whereas the order source is coming through nicely all the way through history. Okay, so that's another thing we can do. Another thing that I think is pretty cool we can do with these UDFs, as in this example, well, let's take a look at the actual customer maintenance. Let's look at that screen. Now I've got one here at the end, O2 Orange, that has a little bit more sample data in it for this. I'm going to come over here to the Invoices tab, and what we were able to do is we were able to actually add that UDF to this grid screen here. And how you do that is, I think we just launched the customizer here. And this will open up this panel, and then you right-click in this this general area here, and then you can come over here and you can see the different, the Format tab is where the heavy lifting is done, and you'll see all these stock fields. And in Custom Office, you can hide these fields, you can change their width or their position, and at the bottom of that list was my UDF, and I simply grabbed it from the bottom and I moved it up to right here. Okay, so not only can you display your UDFs here, but you can change what else shows up here right out of the can. I'm just going to back out of there. And pull them back up. And so that can be a helpful way of quickly finding some stuff. And it sorts just like any other part of the system does. Okay, so that's a pretty slick little tool right there. Okay, let's talk about the aging. So one of the places that we added this was the aging report, and that uses the AR open invoice work table. I don't need to go through and just show you that. You've seen enough tables and work tables already. But let's take a look at this report and talk about how this might affect reports. So here we are. This is the accounts receivable aged invoice report, and this is just the standard report setting here. Nothing's been done to it, and you'll notice that down here, all these fields and capitals, these are all user-defined fields. The system automatically added them to my report selection screen when I added it to certain tables. I didn't have to do anything special to cause this to show up. Here's my order source at the bottom. So what we'll do here is, let's just say that we typed in phone down here. We know we have some phone orders in that value, and we're just going to hit preview here and kind of see what we get. Now, this is the stock out of the can report. Okay, so I typed in phone, and it found the one we just did today for 415. That was a phone order. If I arrow it forward to another division, this is a multi-division demo company, it's found a bunch under orange, and it's found something under Capri. But notice it doesn't actually tell me any validating information. Like, I can't see the word phone by this. I'm just kind of taking it for granted that this information that it picked was based on the fact that these had the value phone in it. So what we did, let's close that, is we made up a new version of this, and this is standard functionality where I just took the standard and saved it as a new setting. And now what I did is we modified this report. So let's take a quick look at this thing behind the scenes. We added the table to the work table, and then we modified it in here. So let's see, View, Field Explorer. And all we did is we added it to this table, so there it is, and we dragged it right onto our report here under this custom setting. So we should be seeing a value down here in Details A once we run this report, the customized version of it. So if we run order source and we type in phone again, then we're going to preview this one. And sure enough, all the ones that had phone come up and nothing else. So you can also flow those user-defined fields over to your canned reports. You can also build custom reports with those user-defined fields. So really working with the data now, getting information out as well as putting it in. Okay. Now we've dealt a lot with header UDFs here. Let's talk a little bit about adding a UDF to like a lines tab of some kind of data entry. Close these guys up. Let's say, for example, go back to the beginning of our demo, kind of tying things together here. Let's go back to our item maintenance, and let's pull up a field here. Let's go to our UDFs, and let's, oh, I don't know, let's make one dangerous, and the color red. Okay, so we've got, I think that was our second item in, was dangerous. Yeah, dangerous. Okay, so there it is. So we flagged an item as dangerous. And let's say for whatever reason we wanted to have that field show up on a purchase order line for that item, kind of flagging it as a dangerous item, let's say. So now what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to get over to the purchase order tables. So we'll come over here, and we'll find the purchase order, and we need to find the purchase order lines, and those are in the detail, PO purchase order detail. There it is. Let's take a look. Here's our hazard rating field from the item master. Let's see how we flowed it. Basically, it got it right out of the item code. Okay. We also added it to the PO work table. Take my word for it. Now we're going to come over to the purchase order entry. And let's see here. We can just pull up an order, any order. And here's what we did here. I'm going to say Control F9. And to add a UDF to a grid screen, once you get into this screen here, you have to right-click on that left edge, and then you can add your fields. So that's all we did here is we added that. Now when we get back out, and we go to the Lines tab, you notice this one's already been added. When it first gets added to your screen, it will always show up to the right. And like with any other normal field, you can drag this around wherever you want it. In this case, I just moved it over to the left. So there it is. If we pick that second item in our list, there it does. It brings in the dangerous that we just gave it in that field. So it's live and talking. We'll order a couple of those. Okay. And then I don't know if I added it to the PO work or not, but if I needed to print this on the PO, I would do that as well. Okay, so that's a little bit of a line example. All right, let's talk about a new area. To do this one, I'm going to switch my company. We're going to talk about buttons next. And I see we're getting close on time, so I'm going to see if I can get through this here. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you a customer record. And we'll just open up these customer maintenance. And we have a collections tab here. And so this is a tab, and this actually ties into one of the other demos I do for the Sage Business Insights Explorer, where we build a custom collections dashboard. But in this case, for Custom Office, what we're going to do is we wanted to point out the fact that we can launch an external program. So right here is a button that I've added to the screen. And if we click that button, it can open up another task in Sage 100. This happens to be my Business Insights Explorer screen, and then in this case, it has a collections view. Now, part of why I wanted to show you that was two reasons. One, I wanted to show you how you can add a button to launch any Sage task from any screen. They're all over the place anyway, but if you wanted to add something custom for yourself, you could do that. I also wanted to show you that you can use UDFs in Business Insights Explorer. This count, these collection notes, the last call, the caller ID, all of these are user-defined fields for the collections dashboard use that we have in here. So just again, showing you how you can really tie the system together. All right, let's take a look at that link behind the scenes. Okay, so here is that screen kind of behind the scenes, and this is called a link setting. And here we gave it the name, and here's the different settings you can do. So in this case, mine was a program that I was launching, but you can do other things as well. This is one place you can attach scripts, you can do images, you can do all sorts of things here. So I just wanted to give you a look at what that kind of looked like behind the scenes. Not too bad. Okay, and we'll do some more, another example with a button here in a minute. Okay, so now we're going to switch it back to our AO3 company. Okay, so what we want to do here, we're going to do another example. We're going to say that we're a vitamin company and we sell specially formulated vitamins to our customers. The customers are generally referred to us by their doctor, and so even though the customers are the patients, the doctors are frequently referring them to us, and we'd like the ability to store that doctor's information along with the customer, and we'd really like to put in the doctor information once and be able to pick it from any customer that might have the same doctor. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a user-defined table. So we're going to go into Custom Office, User-Defined Field and Table Maintenance, and here we're going to take a look at it. We have Accounts Receivable, and we're going to create a new one of these in a minute if we have time. And here's my doctor info. And what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of investigate this guy. So doctor info in a user-defined table, you might be wondering, well, when would I use a user-defined table as opposed to a UDF itself? Well, a UDF is a single field, and it can flow like we've seen it. But a table is made up of more than one field. It has a key, like last name in this example, but it could have other attributes that go along with that. In this case, I made it real simple. I said there was going to be a last name, an address, and some name information. So I added these other fields to the table just like I would if I was adding a UDF. So there they are. And then what I have to do is I have to give that user-defined table some information. So once I've created the table, I can access the button that launches the table maintenance. And here's where I actually put in the doctor's last name, first name, and address, and etc. And you can do some shortcuts and add a UDT to a desktop. It just throws it in under this UDT maintenance. That's all it does. So that can be a way of, and you can restrict access to that with withdrawal maintenance. So you may want somebody to be able to maintain that table, let's say, but you didn't want them getting in here and poking around all the custom office stuff. That would be a why you would do that. And then you can also set the order of the fields here. So if I highlight that table, if it mattered to me and I wanted to, in this case it did, I added these fields, but I also put them in the order that I wanted them in. Okay, so that's how I did that. And then we're going to go take a look at the customer. Customer maintenance. Okay, so over here on our additional tab, here's where I've added a link setting button, and I've added the doctor info. So what I did here is we just added these fields, and what this lets us do, these ones down here are display only. They're the fields that go with whatever the key record was. In this case, that's the last name. So if we hit the lookup here and we change it, it just automatically updates all the rest of the information. So now I have the doctor information is entered in one table, one place, and I can bring it in basically anywhere on any record. Okay. And we're getting close to out of time, so I think what I'm going to do is try to show you guys one more example rather than to go into too much more detail on how I built that one. Try to show you one more example of how you might deploy a user-defined table. Okay, so and this one is one that uses what's called the advanced field settings. Okay, so a common field in MAS that comes with the system is this customer type, A4. And if I hit my lookup button here, let's see if I have one here for customer type. Yep, I do. I can see by looking in this list here, if I sort it, that there's A1, A2, A3, and A4. But nowhere does it tell me what the A1, A2, and A3 represents. So what I could do is I could attach with the advanced field settings some validation to this field that would actually make that a more dynamic field. So that's what we're going to try to accomplish. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to come in here to user-defined field and table maintenance. We're going to go to Accounts Receivable module, and then we're going to add a user-defined table. And we're just going to call this customer type. and it's going to give us customer type code for the description, and we could just leave it at that. And in this case, I'm going to make this 4, and I'm making it 4 on purpose because the original field that I'm going to try to attach this table to for validation is 4-character field. So I want to make that match. Okay, so here's my key field that's been defined. And let's just add some more fields here. We need the description next. So here we're just going to go description. And leave that like that. We'll probably make the length like 10. Should be fine. And we'll say OK. And we'll say OK. Now it's running through the update. It's adding the table to the system, making it available to accounts receivable. And once this is done, we'll add data to our user-defined table. So here's the maintain UDT data. So we're going to come into this one, and now we get to add some fields in here. So A1, and we'll tell it, let's call this retail. Oops, they didn't hire me for my typing. And wholesale. We'll say A3, we'll make it industrial. And A4 can be a military. All right, those are the 4 values we had. We now have a validation table. We'll say accept. And we're going to go ahead and then we're going to add that to that field in customer maintenance. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to find the AR customer master. That's where the customer type field lives. And here's the AR customer master. And the icon with a little lightning bolt on it is the advanced field setting. So wanted to work this into the demo. Let's go. We're going to go ahead and add a setting here. And the field that we're looking for, these are fields in the AR customer. We're going to find the customer type down here. There it is. And what we're going to do is notice toward the bottom of the screen, it's giving me an option to pick that user-defined table as my validation list. So I could have also done some other, validation in here, but specifically to use my table, I would tell it to use this table. So I'm going to say OK, and we're going to close it and close it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back and see if we can't get that to work with our customer. Now we've got the infrastructure in place. And we'll just pull this guy over here. And then what we'll do, the first thing we'll notice is that right away our customer type field now has this little lookup button attached to it. So it's already updated this essentially. So if I hit that lookup, now I get the validation list. It's like it was built with that validation list in mind. But I could also add the description over here if I just wanted to see it display. I could also add that. And let's see here. Let's throw that in there. And that one's going to be under customer type. Here it is, down here. And we'll put that description right there. And we don't need it to be that big. That's probably good enough right there. And then I know because it's a table validated item that I need to move that over to leave room for the little magnifying glass. So I'll just scooch it over a little bit. and we'll see you if we're done or not. I'll come back in and see where we're at. Okay, sure enough, there it is. So if I were to change them, for example, to be an industrial, now I've got that label displaying there as well. Okay, so that is a hour-long packed demo on some of the things that you can do with Custom Office, and that concludes my Lunch and Learn demonstration.
Thank you very much, Bruce. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions or you need further assistance or would like further information on the custom module, please feel free to contact me. My name is Sherry Colombo. I am your account manager here at ISM. I will be sending out some follow-up emails regarding this, so you will have my contact information. So thank you, everyone, for your time today, and have a very wonderful Tuesday afternoon. Thank you very much. Take care.